wanted to explain a little bit of just the differences between the piano and the pipe organ. So in the intro, you saw me playing the organ this morning. And I'll start with the piano here. I mean, I don't think most people would know this, but the piano is actually a much more modern instrument than the organ. The organ goes back thousands of years, whereas the piano is only a few hundred. You can kind of see this is a really old piano, but it's taken apart. You can actually see how the sustain pedal, which is the one on the right, actually is just a wooden beam that goes there. And let me hold that down. That's the main difference in the playing experience, I would say. So as I press down, you can see it's all mechanical. And what's happening is actually these dampers, you see they're little felt tips that go against the strings. What normally happens, there's actually like over 20 or 30 moving parts to each single key. So if I press that key, you can see that hammer hits the string, and as I'm holding down the key, that damper lets actually the two strings ring out. But then as soon as I let go, you see this damper goes back into place. But the sustain pedal brings all of those dampers away, and so even as I release the note, the strings still ring. And so I can sustain notes without having to hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 notes all at the same time. That's the main difference with the organ. So with the piano, if I show you real quick, I can make a lot more noise with the piano because I can play notes that I don't have to physically hold down. I can go. It rings out a lot more. And you can kind of, what might kind of make sense to you is that there's a sweet spot between like, okay, it's nice to hold, but if I start to add too many notes to that, you're going to experience kind of a muddiness or a dissonance if I'm playing. It's like everything kind of blends together. So there's kind of an art of, it's almost like pressing a restart button on the damper pedal, where it's like, once I kind of start a new set of notes, I pick up and then I kind of catch it. I really think about it as like a release and then a catch it. I want to catch it so that it's not anything too dissonant or anything too disjointed. So if I'm going like this, I don't want it. I want those two to blend together. That's me picking up my foot, but if I were to just leave my foot down the whole time, you're going to get dissonance. You're going to kind of eventually hear things blend together. It's going to get muddy. There's kind of too many notes going on at the same time. But that sustain pedal is kind of, it hides a multitude of sins for piano players. You're able to produce a lot of beautiful flowing sounding stuff with the sustain pedal because you can blend notes together. You can really make a lot happen, even if you don't have the quickest fingers or the best technique, or if you're really trying to find the next place for your fingers to land. So that's the piano. I think in a lot of ways it has its advantages, but now we're going to talk about the organ. So now we're going to look at the organ. This is a video I took a little while ago. I had a phone kind of basically on the bench recording my feet, so you can see what my feet are doing, and then you can see my hands. So one thing that I didn't mention about the piano, but it is velocity sensitive. That's why it's a much more modern instrument. If you come in with less velocity, or you hit the key softer, the hammer's going to hit the string softer and it'll produce less noise. Whereas the organ, you can kind of see, especially when my thumb goes down, but any of those white keys, you can see it kind of depresses down. That's a fixed velocity. It's like a light switch. It's either on or off. And in the case of the pipe organ, it's literally whether the valve is opened to allow wind to go through that particular pipe at that particular pitch or if it's closed. So everything at the default position is closed, but then whenever I press the key down, that opens it up for air to pass through. And I'm hoping to almost do a series on organ, so I'll go much more into depth of the mechanics of this, but this is just specifically today talking about it in relationship to the piano. So you can see my feet, they don't have a sustain pedal. There's no way to sustain the sound. As soon as I let go of either of the keys on my hands or my feet, the sound is done. Now I'm playing an acoustic organ in a large church space, so there's going to be echo or reverb, but there's no way to sustain the notes in the same way. And so it's a little bit hard to see in this, and now I'm kind of getting a little bit more bouncy in my playing, it looks like, but my fingers almost glide from key to key. Again, I said that the sustain pedal covers a multitude of sins. So in terms of your hands, you don't really have space to let go of keys, for a count and then press down on the next key. You're almost like floating from key to key, and I'll go more into depth with that with the technique. But the advantage is because I can play notes with the pedals, and it's not sustaining the notes in my hands, but it's almost providing an extra place of sustenance or sustain. That kind of also can cover some sins. And actually you can kind of see, you get a full sound even when you just saw there my hand kind of leaves the organ. I a lot of times my left hand isn't really doing much with the style of organ that I play, because I'm just mirroring a lot of what I'm doing with my left hand with the pedals on the feet. And so it gives me more freedom to, pull those various stops, but it's a much more like flowing thing. It's much more dynamic, much more full body. I think on the surface organ appears harder, but a lot of, especially like what I'm doing with playing hymns, I would prefer to play them on organ than piano because it's easier to create noise with the organ because there's just so much sound, and so you actually don't have to fill space as creatively. But that's basically the differences. I know that that's just a broad kind of overview, but that's the main difference. Obviously there's a lot more similar than's different, but it's more different than people would think or give it credit for.